Welcome to the Village Well podcast, brought to you by Village Well Books and Coffee in downtown Culver City. Welcome back to the Village Well podcast. I'm Jennifer Casper, your host.
And I'm Josh Stratton-Carlson, your producer.
How are you doing today, Josh?
Doing pretty good. Not too bad. Just a bit hot out there.
Oh my gosh, it's brutal. The weeks of hot weather is starting to catch up to us.
Yep.
There was some news this week that was really troubling. There was an article in the New York Times about how people aren't reading for pleasure anymore. Did you see that?
I did not see that.
Honestly, I haven't read it. I still need to read the whole article, but the headline was that only 16% of adults read for pleasure.
Whoa, crazy.
So that is a call to action for us.
Yes, and for you, dear listener.
Yeah, we need to convert people to reading for pleasure because it's honestly the balm for all of our ills these days. You know, we all have ADD, lack of focus leads to depression, anxiety, and one way to decompress from our digital workaholic ADD lives is to read books.
Totally. I actually, unrelated, even before I had a job here, after I graduated college, I intentionally started reading again to try to combat my ADHD.
You just knew instinctively.
Yeah. Well, I studied psychology. I had done some research and I was like, if you lower the amount of stimulus you're constantly getting, your baseline comes down a little bit, and it's helped, you know?
It's empowering to be in this position, to be able to proselytize and tell people, hey, here's something that will help you. Totally. And it actually will help us stay in business so that we can continue to do what we're doing.
And dare I say, fun too.
It is fun, yeah. Yesterday was my day off and I didn't go to the beach, but I did read an entire book.
Oh, nice.
So I was proud of myself. It's a book that comes out in October. It's called Heart the Lover by Lily King. It's for people who remember her book, Writers and Lovers. It's kind of a prequel and a sequel. It kind of wraps around that book, although not in an intense way where you can't just go ahead and read it by itself.
Totally.
It was awesome. I read it. I started it and finished it yesterday. It was a very fun and relaxing way to spend my day off.
Awesome. Yeah, we had a bit of a discussion of that one on our last episode, if you want to check it out. But had one of our lovely publisher reps chatting about that one.
That book, right? Yeah. Andrea Tetrick from Ingram Publishing Services, PGW. So people should read more. People should come to our book clubs. We have 5 or 6 book clubs now. It's fun to read. It's fun to encourage yourself to read, maybe to read something you wouldn't ordinarily pick on your own. We have our original book club, which deals with a lot of contemporary literature, could be fiction or nonfiction, but usually we pick something kind of recent. And then we have the sci-fi fantasy one. We have a poetry club. We have a creativity book club. And what's the last one? I'm not thinking. Our newest one, the activism book club.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a baking book club.
Oh, and we have a baking book club too. Yeah, where people, they pick a cookbook and everybody who participates prepares something from the club and they come in and taste them and talk about cooking. So
yeah, and I think the fun thing about book clubs too is you only meet in person once a month, but it kind of makes the solo time when you're reading that book feel a little bit more social.
Yeah, you're connected to other people that are doing the same thing.
Yeah, and you're prepping for this conversation together. Mm-hmm. There's group chats that have spun out. People have started if you read one in a series, there'll be a group of 6 people that's oh guys, let's do a separate book club and let's read the sequel to it. So it's a fun way to build community.
It definitely is. And today's episode is a recap of the conversation of our last science fiction fantasy book club. And it's a great recap. I haven't read the book. They talked about Murderbot Diaries. Yep.
And now an Apple TV show.
Oh, right. Yeah. They had great turnout for the book club meeting. So anyway, if you've read the Murderbot Diaries and you want to hear a conversation about it, or if you're curious about the book, this will be a great episode to listen to. So I hope you enjoy the episode.
How's it going, y'all? I'm Tom Rubio. I'm the leader of the Sci-Fi Fantasy Book Club here at Village Well, and I'm here today with 2 members of our book club, dare I say veterans of our book club. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure thing. I am Joseph Lucy. I am a Palms resident and have been attending Tom's book club for about 8 months or so.
I'm Derek Lane, also as what you said, a veteran of the book club.
That's right.
Been in Culver City for many, many years, more than I will say on the podcast.
I remember you coming up to me, not on a book club day, and gushing about this book and being like, we need to read this at some point. And I was like, I'll keep that in the back of my mind. Yeah, so the book we're talking about today is the Murderbot Diaries, Volume 1, which is a combination of 2 of the novellas that are part of the Murderbot series. All Systems Red, which is the first one, and then Artificial Condition. Today we're just kind of going to be referring to them as one book and talking about them as like one story. Yeah. So Derek, do you want to kind of lay down what's the setting? What's the world that we're kind of drawn into with Murderbot?
Sure, I'll give it a try. It's a corporate dystopia in which we are introduced to a security unit, a construct that is partly made of biologically created components, cloned body parts, as well as mechanical parts. He is what has been called a cyborg, but I think it's important to note that he is not a person who has had his body parts replaced. He was constructed from the get-go as an object, a tool that is rented out to planetary surveyors. And we see that he has been rented out to a group surveying a planet, and he is watching Netflix.
That's what he does.
He has broken his, what they call the governor module, which I think I would like to get into later, like the name of it, why it's called the governor module. But essentially, it's the slave circuit that punishes him if he disobeys a human's orders. Yeah. And what does he do with his freedom? He downloads a lot of soap operas and just watches them and watches them and watches them, and does his job in a pretty poor way.
Yeah.
Half-baked way. He's lazy. He just wants to watch TV.
An inspiration to all of us.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, pretty much. Did I miss anything, Joseph?
No, I think that's a lot of it. I think the only thing I would add for, people who are interested in the book is that it is set in a far future. So this is a spacefaring, galaxy trotting kind of story.
Yeah. I thought that was one of the things that made this book so accessible. It's a really fun book to get into, especially for newbies who don't normally get into sci-fi. This is not aliens and spaceships and phasers and warp drive and all that garbage. This is confined to a planet that is not urbanized. It's barely inhabited. And it's about him, or I should say them.
It's about, I think it is the...
well, that's something we should talk about too.
Yeah.
It versus them.
Yeah.
Is it an object? Is it a person? Who knows? And how it relates to the people that it's supposedly working for, but is really, watching over while he watches Netflix.
Yeah, it was a super enjoyable read. It is both incredibly funny. The POV from this character is just scathing of how humans operate in the real world, while also being very character and plot driven as well. There's some core mysteries, both about Sec Unit or Murderbot, as it calls itself, and what exactly it is and what its history is, as well as just how the idea of being a not human, not quite robot kind of person plays out in this story. So very hard to put down.
No, for sure. And I think that is what grabbed me initially, is like the tone of this book was just so funny and easily to get into and relatable. Like he's kind of sassy, he's got a little like he's the way that he sees his humans, at sometimes it's very caring. Like he really values like getting his missions done and making sure everybody is safe. But a lot of the times, and it really, it changes, or it differs human to human, I think. But he, he's like bad-mouthing people.
We got a lot of traction inside of the book club as well, talking about this, where, there is this component of free will that technically the Sec Unit does have free will. Its governor module is broken, so it gets to make decisions. However, its role is to continue doing its job. And so I remember really walking away from our book club excited about, all the different nuances we had on this idea of what does it mean to be free and what does it mean to make choices when you are really confined to a certain set of parameters on what you can and can't do.
I remember, I think something that you said that struck me, I think towards the end, is that it isn't a story about him trying to become more of a human and like figure out what it means to be human. It's a story about him becoming himself. And then I think I like right after that during book club, my brain kind of exploded or short circuited because I was just like, what does it mean to be like when we usually talk about it? What does it mean to be human? And in a story where humans aren't the only, intelligent species, it means something different. Yeah, that moment really broke my brain. If you want to kind of elaborate on that more, I would love to kind of like your thought about, he's trying to become himself, or it's a story about him becoming himself. Yeah.
Well, I read somewhere, I won't take credit for this genius statement that you just made. I read it somewhere, and it went something like this: he's not trying to become human. And that is a cliche of artificial intelligence in science fiction in general. Artificial intelligence, as we think about it, not in sci-fi, but just today, as artificial intelligence comes online, it's about imitating human thought. That's what we think of it as. And Martha Wells, the author of this book, she has a different take on it. It's not about imitating human thought. It's about becoming himself. It's not about I want to do what humans do. He's trying to figure out who he is. Is he a person? I mean, just the fact that he has to figure that out. Like you and I and Joseph know that we're people. We have a baseline. He doesn't. The idea of what makes a person is explored in the book.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the jewel of the genre that we've chosen to explore is that so many sci-fi books operate on these two levels of like, oh, wow, there are robots, or oh, wow, there's this incredible concept. And then it's when we get into these book club meetings where, I'll take my notes and I'll try and bring a couple of tidbits to people, but people will come back with just like, did anybody realize that this is actually a really classic neurodivergent story?
Yeah.
And I will just have my eyes wide open. I never thought of that. I never saw it. And as soon as you tell me, it's so much easier to read this book on, this other paradigm. And yeah, I think that's why I keep coming back to our book club, is that this is like a regular experience.
And you mentioned we didn't quite touch on like the corporate aspect as much as you wanted to.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into that? Because I feel like even as you were explaining it, I couldn't help but read it through that lens now and really like maybe that might be the most powerful narrative coming from it. So the looming villain within the story is this kind of vague, shadowy corporate entity. Joseph, do you kind of want to explain like how that works within the story?
Yeah. So I'm glad that you used the word vague. It is a nebulous kind of description of what exactly this corporation does. But we know from Murderbot's perspective that they control every facet of its life. They are responsible for planet surveying and ensuring that function, as well as it seems having an overarching effect on the economy and the galactic system at large. But the company is an insurance provider. And so Murderbot is a product or function of that by necessity, the insurance company demands that Murderbot or a sec unit is attached with these kinds of expeditions or surveys. And so it's pretty bleak that you are forced to purchase slavery, more or less, to go on these journeys to explore planets.
Yeah.
And you're forced to expose yourself to corporate rapaciousness in the form of big data. The role that SecUnit plays is not just security. He watches everything you do. He taps into your data sets, your survey information. Everything you say and do is run through a giant AI somewhere out there in the universe. And then the corporation can sell you more stuff. Oh, well, you said you wanted to maybe use hydropower on this planet. Well, here are some hydropower solutions that will sell you for the low, low price of 8 billion credits. Like they know everything about you because you're being surveilled.
And that's how you can kind of tell that the story is science fiction, because, in like our actual world, like corporations don't hack your data and then sell you that based on,
That was the one part of the book that I didn't really believe.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
big data, that's like a sci-fi concept, right?
Yeah.
Of course. No, this idea, without spoilers, the company at large constantly plays both sides, so that either you are successful in your survey, and that's so great, we're glad that our sec unit can help you, but also they are funding other surveys and kind of pitting parties against each other, so that, guess what? The company always comes out on top.
There's kind of a scene where he tells the humans, when interacting with corporations, make sure that you can leave, because they will sell you access to the room or the spaceship or whatever it was. But if they don't actually tell you that you may open the door and leave, they'll try to sell you a key to get out, and you'll be a hostage. And that's the level of corporate rapaciousness that, this world posits. It's incredibly immoral, of course. You expect to be able to walk in and walk out without having to pay for the privilege of both. Mm-hmm. It's just assumed when you buy the coffee that you're allowed to drink it. It's crazy the levels to which Martha Wells has written the corporate rim culture. But that makes me think about the spiritual angle. Let me lay this on you, okay?
Lay it on.
You guys tell me if I'm full of it, all right? Murderbot is the name that he has given to himself when he's an object. When he is a piece of equipment that has done something, and then he becomes free. He gets free will, and he gives himself that name. But then when he meets the kind humans from outside the corporate culture, from Preservation Ox, that's an independent, non-corporate world, they first call him it. And then he removes his helmet at one point at the command of Dr. Mensa, the leader of the survey team. And they see his face, and they realize it's not an it. Yeah. And yet he tells them, I'm an it. I am equipment. And so they start to refer to him as sec unit. They never actually call him Murderbot. That is a private, secret word for his own trauma and pain. They call him sec unit. They give him a name. It no longer is an appellation of equipment as, that's our sec unit. That becomes his name.
That's our boy.
And this is the 1923 philosophy that you're going to tell me is not relevant. But Martin Buber in 23 wrote this book called I and Thou. The basic concept is that you as a person have relationships with other people, and you don't have relationships with objects. You experience objects. You experience its. But between people, the I-thou is a relationship, and that's where spirituality comes from. That's where communication happens, and you learn about someone else, and they learn about you, and you grow because of the relationship between you and a person.
Yeah.
And I saw that in how the humans began interacting with Sec Unit. Yeah. Suddenly his sense of self grows. And I think there's a sort of spirituality in communication and talking and learning together. And I have to pitch the book club. That's what we did. We sat down, and I learned a lot of new things at the book club, a lot of different ideas. Joseph said amazing things. You had great ideas. Other people at the book club said really interesting things that I had never thought of. And this informs what I'm talking about right now. I learned and grew. So, yay, Martin Buber. You were on to science fiction and
Buber.
Robots before you even knew.
That's, something that I love about our book club is that without fail, every meeting there's at least one person that didn't like the book. And I mean, for me, that is why I show up, at just the chance to see this story through other people's eyes and see the book in a way that I would have never thought of in my own perspective, even having read a lot of science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah, I always thought my favorite book club meetings would be the ones where, like, I love the book. I was like, oh, this is the best book ever. And those are great. Everybody, in a circle explaining the reason why a book was good is really fantastic. And contrary to that, I think the best book clubs for me have been the ones where I walk in with a huge chip on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like these 300 pages were awful.
You go straight to the haters corner.
I go to the actual haters corner in our group, and people will put their heart on their sleeve and say, like, no, actually, this was exciting for me, or, oh, this brought up a lot of things for me. This was true to my own experience. And I feel that chip get smaller and smaller till it falls off. And I walk away, I think, a little bit better.
No, it encourages you to kind of step outside yourself if you feel super strongly about it. One way or the other, actually. I think having a love for something and then, hearing from somebody that you respect, that you've heard from before, that has shared the same opinions of you, saying, no, I actually didn't like this. Like that, I think, I don't know, like that kind of media literacy and ability to discuss without like letting ego get in the way is really, it's like an important thing to it's an important muscle to work.
I want to ask, what did you think about the Murderbot book club, specifically that one?
Yeah, I was really pleased. So for anybody who wasn't lucky enough to attend, the group by and large was, I think, very positive about the book.
Yeah.
Some people walked in with really big opinions about the TV show. And actually, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was one of our largest, if not our largest attendings. It had like 30 plus people.
It was standing room only, I thought. There were some people in the back that had to stand.
Yeah.
So.
And that's just so heartwarming. I mean, I moved to LA with this expectation that I would do a better job of community building. And so to go to a book club and see 30 plus people, all who wanted to talk about a book, was super exciting. And then there were some people, even amongst this crowd of very positive voices, who were explicitly like, wasn't the book for me.
Yeah.
The parts where I was like, this is a joyful sarcasm, to them was like a droning kind of character. And so one of the topics that I thought was really interesting is a really incendiary one in our lives today is some people made these comparisons between ChatGPT and modern LLMs to this kind of character, Murderbot, for whom Murderbot is a product, not a person. And we're reading really weird headlines today of people are falling in love with their chat logs on ChatGPT and forming these relationships. And so I think it's exciting to go through, like you said earlier, the layers of a book, to say the plot was exciting, these characters were interesting, and then in an hour and a half with Tom leading us, kind of get to these places where people are bringing up every topic under the sun to kind of walk through a book.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Proceed with caution.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now entering the spoiler zone. Okay, so here we go. Let's talk about his dark past, I think. Because that really, drives a lot of the plot, especially into, the second novella of this book. Joseph, what is revealed pretty early on?
Yeah.
What are his sins?
Yeah, so Murderbot is not innocent. In a previous incident, on a previous kind of expedition or survey, something went terribly wrong, and that something makes up the meat of the second novella. And the something that we'll reveal here is that inside of a mining pit called the Ganaka pit, Murderbot turned on the group at large, or is suspected to have, and killed many, many people. I think 22 different individuals. And so Murderbot walks with that chip on its shoulder, and then in the shutdown afterwards is the process by which Murderbot was able to control its governor module. So because of this incident, because of it being kind of turned off and turned back on, it was able to gain its freedom.
I thought the sense of guilt that Sec Unit has is so critical to how it becomes a person.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that says. We need a therapist to tell me
Very Catholic book.
how messed up that is. But, guilt should not make you a person. But that's how it reads.
Yeah, I do think it explains kind of a certain kind of self-sacrificing tendency. Obviously Murderbot is more resilient than a fully organic person, but there are multiple sections in that first novella where Murderbot is kind of opting for very self-destructive acts. In fact, it volunteers to forcibly shut itself off by shooting itself in the head to save a group of people once it's turned rogue. So yeah, I think what you're speaking to of this kind of guilt that's stuck with it really empowers kind of that self-sacrificing attitude.
And Sec Unit, meets other units, other constructs. And this also brings up, I guess, the sexuality spectrum in Martha Wells's Murderbot Diaries. Like the units that he meets, some of them are comfort units who are designed to comfort physically humans. And Sec Unit sees how they behave and draws lessons from what they did and what that means for him, because he had one perspective of what it meant to be a person and a construct, and Sec Unit felt like he was special because he broke his governor module. And then he meets comfort units who did not break their governor modules, but still took up weapons, which they were not trained to use, to defend humans.
Yeah.
And that comparison of his life and his experience with, slaves who could do the same thing, I think changes how Sec Unit perceives the world a little bit.
So towards the end of the first novella, Sec Unit kind of is a part of this successful, very deadly mission, but he gets his crew out of this planet, this dicey situation that they're in with these other kind of rogue Sec Units, and kind of becomes like an intergalactic hero. And then his crew just kind of, they let it go. They let Sec Unit go. And it chooses to kind of go and figure more out about its past in the first place that it, and then in that really in the second novella is when it starts interacting more with other like intelligent, robot units.
And so he leaves, and this is the context that you're providing. He leaves to find out who he is or who he was and what that means. And as he's leaving, he has to get on a ship to go to this other planet where he perhaps committed this atrocity. And the ship ends up being a massive godlike artificial intelligence who is very rude. He calls it ART, and that stands for the Asshole Research Transport. And it's like a sarcastic, affectionate emotion towards another artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And ART, flies him, through space to the other planet. And during that, he modifies him.
Yeah.
And he says, look, you're never going to pass as human. And it's funny because he never wanted to be human. He constantly doesn't want to be human. And ART tells him, you have to look human. You look like a Sec Unit, they will find you. And so let me chop off your legs and arms and make them shorter. And let's make you grow hair and all this other stuff and make you more human. And he doesn't like it.
Yeah, Sec Unit hates it.
Sec Unit hates it because he doesn't want to be human, but he recognizes that he has to pass and become something different than a Sec Unit. And so setting down on the operating table is this huge moment. How would you describe it? He had to trust that ART wasn't actually pulling a fast one on him and is going to deactivate him or
just
something.
Deactivated him or turned them in, He could have done anything. Like he could not have woken up. Yeah. It was a risk of trust.
And something that happened right after that when he woke up is relevant, I think. Previously, throughout the first novella and the second one, you realize he talks about it extensively, that he can turn his pain receptors down. So when he gets shot and he loses 35% of his body mass, it doesn't hurt him. It impacts him. It makes it hard to walk when you don't have a leg, but he's not hurt. But when he sits down on the operating table and he wakes up, he is unable to modulate that. He feels all the pain, and he knew it going in that he would not be able to suppress the pain. So it was going to hurt to do this. So it wasn't just a trust thing, but it was a self-sacrifice physically that normally he doesn't have to deal with.
I thought a lot of the thematics of that moment made it all the more punchy. You know, we talked a lot through this last half hour or so about this idea of self-discovery, that Murderbot needs to discover who it is and what it is. And there's nothing as transformative as literally being under the knife, literally being made to look so much different than everybody else like you, to find who you are. And it's an uncomfortable answer for Murderbot, but it seems through the narrative that the answer to who Murderbot is maybe it's not a human person, but it is more human than it was. It's looking a little bit more hairy and shorter and having a different gait and walk to make it just a little bit different. I thought it was impressive.
And this is really only the first part of the story, too. There are, 4 or 5 novellas after this?
There's another one coming out next year in May. I thought it was one of the most accessible books.
Yeah, agreed.
That we've certainly read, but I've certainly read.
Y'all, thank you so much for coming on the show. Love doing this. Love it when our book club gets to stand in the spotlight for a little bit, because it's obviously the best one.
I'm finding the book club to be really, really a valuable part of the month.
Heck
you know,
yeah.
I look forward to it because,
Oh, cool.
you know, who was it? Sarah brought brownies once.
Oh, yeah.
There's a cafe here that if you get early enough, you can get something. There's interesting people to talk to. It's a good time, and it's important to interface with the community. I was talking to, I think, the owner here. The community aspect of the Village Well, Culver City didn't have that. I mean, I've been here for a while, and what do they call them? Third spaces?
Yeah.
This is a great third space, and I just got to applaud you, Tom. Should we applaud Tom? You know, as being part of that. I'm digging the Village Well.
I just read the books for the ice cream social.
There we go.
Hold it, there's ice cream
That's my
afterwards?
guy.
Oh, yeah. That was
Shit,
good.
I always have to go home and make dinner for my
Yeah,
kids.
ice cream dinner is where it's at.
Okay, ice cream next time.
And then I think in September, we're reading Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. Well, thanks for coming on the show, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, yeah.
We'll see you next time.
If you'd like more information from us, check out the show notes or send us an email at podcast@villagewell.com. You can always order the books mentioned through our website. This episode of the Village Well podcast is brought to you by Village Well Books and Coffee. It was produced and edited by Josh Stretton Carlson, and our theme music is from Noah Vickland. See you next week, and keep reading.